If you're ready to stop building someone else's dream and start creating your own, join our free community, the Self-Directed Network, at acesmanagementinc.com/school. It's where people leaving their W-2s come together to build freedom, purpose, and momentum toward what's next. Welcome to Life After W-2. I'm your host, John Chan. After 17 years in corporate America, I made the leap to build my own business. It was messier than I thought it would be, but also full of valuable lessons I didn't know I needed. This show is about sharing shifts in mindset, pivots in strategy, and personal changes that come with pursuing financial freedom. You're not alone in this. We're all figuring it out, one step at a time. Welcome to Life After W-2. Today, I'm sitting down with Michael Hoang, who went from the security of a W-2 job to carving his own path in real estate and financial freedom. Michael shares what it really looks like to step away from a stable career, the messy but rewarding process of becoming self-employed, and the lessons he's learned about building wealth through assets. We talk about the role of networking, the power of education, and the advice he'd give to his younger self on chasing financial independence. Let's get into it. Michael, welcome.
Glad to be here, man. Good to see you again, brother.
Yeah, you too. So let's start off with your journey out of your W-2 in 60 seconds or less. What were you doing in the corporate world?
So before I left my W-2 for real estate, I was full-time travel Monday through Friday, sometimes Monday through Thursday. I'd fly to a different city every week. And I was only home here. I live in Houston. I was only in Houston on weekends, holidays, and vacation. I did that for about 8.5 years. And in that time, we grew a company from 180 million in revenue to about 1.1 billion and went public. And it became apparent along the way that the fruits of that labor were not going to be spread out evenly. The promises that were made to me by my boss and my company were kind of not materializing the way they were promised. I was doing a lot to add value to the company and bring up enterprise value. So I started doing real estate while I was traveling. So for anybody who says they don't have time to do it, like that's not true. I was 100% travel and then coming home on the weekends to go walk properties and lock up deals. And so it definitely can be done. So I just knew that I had to build something for myself because I couldn't rely on somebody else to build it for me by way of a W-2. And so I forget who said it, but somebody told me along the way, it's like job pays your bills, but nobody gets rich from a W-2. You get rich by building and holding assets, by having equity.
Yeah. So, I mean, you put your head down, you just did a bunch of work, you helped that company grow. And then at that point, when promises weren't being fulfilled, that's when you decided that you knew that you wanted to leave?
Yeah. And, I built a bridge, right? I didn't just jump out of the plane. And so I built a bridge. I started buying properties. I got myself educated. At that time, I was sending a lot of direct mail. I hired some virtual assistants overseas so I built out systems and processes, handed it to them. I started buying properties and there just came a time. Let's see, the first deal that I bought, I think I had like 57,000 in equity at the time I closed on the property. So I could have flipped it, but I held it as a rental. And I just thought about how hard I had to work in my W-2 to get that same $57,000 of equity. And then I just know my numbers, right? Like 4% of real estate at any given time is distressed. And so as the plane is taking off from Bush Intercontinental Airport here in Houston, and you look down at the neighborhoods as you're taking off, it's like, you're like, there's 100 houses, 4 of them are distressed. There's 100 houses, 4 of them are distressed. What am I doing? Like the money is not like, turn this plane around. We were flying to Denver. I'm like, there's no money in Denver. The money's here in my own backyard. Like this W-2 job's not going to cut it. Like turn this plane around. And so it just became like once you see something, you can't unsee it. And so I could do 2 deals a year and make more than my salary for that year. And it took way less effort to do 2 deals than it did to do my full-time job.
Wow. So then, yeah, I can see why being at the W-2 was no longer motivating. So then once you made that decision, so you started doing some wholesaling in real estate. What were the first steps that you took to start that transition from making that decision to leave to then actually leaving?
So for me, it was like, I have this I don't know, I never believed in a job. And so because my father was self-employed most of his life and he had a feast or famine kind of business where he'd make a bunch of money during the summer he'd make nothing during the winter and then have to survive. In fact, some of the little toys on the shelf behind me here, I have some models of dump trucks and heavy equipment and Uniloader that symbolize different phases of my life. And so I saw my dad make tons of money and none at all, tons of money and none at all. And my first job was in oil and gas, and we would build land based rigs and we would make a bunch of money in overtime. And then we knew the project was coming, we'd get laid off and then we would get called back. So even as I worked from my way from blue collar to white collar, I never really believed in a job, but I was surrounded by white collar workers who just kind of always thought their job would always be there, and they also all thought they were going to get rich off of having a job, and I never understood that. But they just came from a different background to me. So when I was in blue collar and didn't like it, I thought the answer was white collar. And then when I got white collar and realized it wasn't all it was cut out to be, I realized I wanted to be no collar. And so I wanted to leave my W-2. But for me, I had this idea that a job would never really be there for me. So before I met my wife and got married, I said, what do I need an apartment for? I rented a room in a house and I was paying like $600 a month because I was traveling so much. And then I house hacked. I bought a house. You could either buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, rent out one unit, live in one unit, rent out the rest, or you can buy a house with a lot of bedrooms, rent out those rooms, and live in the master. And so when I went from renting a room for 600 a month, I said, let me buy a house and just live and just pay 600 a month. Then now I own a house and I have roommates. But what happened is the miracle of real estate is, values go up, rents go up, debt goes down. And so when I got into my house hack, I was actually living for free. And then I started buying rental properties with the idea of I will move into a rental property by myself, or I will move into a house by myself when the cash flow from my other rentals could pay the mortgage. And so now today I live in this house that you see here that I bought for around 50 cents on the dollar off market. My mortgage is super duper low because I paid half of what all my neighbors paid. And we moved into this. It was going to be a rental at first, but we did the math and realized we could move in here and the cash flow could cover this. And so once I was living for free, I said, okay, like now we're getting closer. I need to start seriously thinking about the next steps in my career. So for me, I was building a bridge before I cross it, and so when people contact me and they say, I just want to quit my job right now, I usually have to slow them down. And we have to talk about like, where are you at? What kind of financial reserves do you have? What's your cost of living? But knowing what I know now about real estate, I know that I moved too slow. I got a house hack and I lived for free for 4.5 years and I just kind of stagnated and sat there and just piled all my money into like the S&P 500 and waited for my next move because I just had this belief system every step along the way. I didn't want to buy a house because I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to pay it for 30 years. But it's like, oh, you get a house hack, somebody else pays it. And then I didn't buy rentals because I thought, well, you have to wholesale first, flip second, then you can buy rentals. And then the first deal that I got, I was going to wholesale it. And I've told this story before on my own podcast that the guy who was mentoring me at the time was a private lender, and he said, yeah, this is a great deal to wholesale. Have you thought about flipping it? I would fund it if you want to flip it. And I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. Okay, this is a flip. I could flip it. And then he says, why don't you go talk to this lender? You might be able to keep it. You might be able to put a little long-term loan on it and keep it. Showed it to her, and she's like, honey, I can get you 10 of these. If the deals look like this, bring me 10 more. And I can put 10 in your name and then 10 in your wife's name. And after that, we could switch you to another loan, a different type of loan where you can just keep buying. And so every step along the way, like my mind expanded, like my financial thermostat was raised as I got around the right people and as I was taking action. I have a friend named Patrick Precourt, and he likes to say that the GPS doesn't start moving until you start moving, or the GPS doesn't start working till you start moving. And so as I started moving, the GPS started working, my network started kicking in. And I really regret that because when I bought my house hack, I learned I could have did this years ago. I was just afraid to. And then when I bought my first rental property, I learned I could have done this years ago. For 4.5 years, I've been sitting in my house hack working while my wife is in school, and I could have been buying properties. And so all along the way, each step that I took, I learned that I was more than prepared when I thought I wasn't. So when I look back at it, it's like I didn't even have to go through the house hack phase. I could have just started buying rental properties, right? But that's the growth I had to go through. And I only went through that by getting around the right people, by networking, joining mentorships, going to real estate meetups here in Houston. And then my financial thermostat and my understanding of the world just expanded. So going back to it, I would have just told myself, start now. If you want a house hack, that's great, especially if you don't have any kids or you're not married to the area that you're in. great, go house hack, but you don't have to do that. Like if you know what you're doing, you can go right to rentals or right to wholesaling or right to flipping. So I would just tell myself like get off the sidelines and get to it. And then there was a part of me that was still believing the story that I was going to get rich off of W2, that the company was going to go public and I was going to, be given some cushy job and a bunch of money. That never really materialized.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that situation where you think you get on the ground floor and everything's just going to work out for you, but it doesn't always work out that way. So, what it sounds like is you made that decision, I no longer want to be here. And you started putting in work, just building up skills and networking. Is that right?
Yeah, networking, building up skills, listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, going to meetups. If someone tells me I'm trying to get started in real estate, I can tell you how serious they are by their calendar. There's free meetups all around you. You can go to meetup.com. You can go to Facebook groups, type in the name of your city, and type in Houston real estate or Chicago real estate or Denver real estate. You find those groups, you ask for meetups there. Audiobooks, podcasts, stuff like that got me going in the right direction. But what really took it to the next level was meeting the right people, was finding a mentor and finding a community of people that were doing what I wanted to do. So if you're not taking those steps and you're just trying to get started in real estate, you're not getting the traction that you need. You got to do more than watch like a YouTube short or something. You got to do more than just tell your friends you want to do real estate. You got to start moving your feet.
Yeah, love that. A lot of times, even in my own world, when I decide I want to do something, I have no idea how I'm going to do it, what I'm going to do, or the details of it. But you just go out, even just like talking to people. I think when I was first started looking for an integrator, I didn't know what I was looking for. But the more conversations I had, the clearer it became that this is what the person, this is the avatar. So yeah, like just starting, I think is huge. So you go from I no longer want to be here. I start building up the skills. I start meeting the right people, getting in the right rooms. So at what point do you finally make that decision to leave?
Uh, the big one was we wanted to go overseas for an extended amount of time. My wife is from Asia, and she was in a position where she had graduated college, and she had not been working yet, and waiting for licensing and stuff to come in the mail. And it didn't really work with my employer for me to leave for more than a month at a time. And so I just kind of told him this is the direction that I'm going. Like I am going to go overseas for an extended period of time. And the company was laying off some people at the time. And it was kind of understood that if they would approve the vacation request and then lay me off, uh, they said that wouldn't happen, but I just kind of had the vibe that that's what was going to happen. And so 3 days before my vacation, they laid me off. And this is how like fast your world changes in a W-2 job. I had a company vehicle because I was provided a car. They had a tow truck waiting in the neighborhood and before they called me. So even though my boss was in another state, they had it all set up where they call me, they offboard me with HR, and then they're like, by the way, you're going to get a call from a tow truck company, and the tow truck company is beeping in on my call while I'm there, and then they text me, "Hey, I'm outside. Do you have the key?" So it just all 8.5 years just ripped away that fast, right? Just because I couldn't live the lifestyle that I wanted to, I couldn't go take care of family business and do things overseas that I needed to. And the company had been a little bit flexible in the past, but there was a layoff going on. And I can tell you guys this, that when you're starting in real estate, do not tell your coworkers that you are doing real estate. At first, it's a fun little thing, but eventually you become like a threat to the order. And the order is the system is designed for you to leverage yourself up in consumer debt and your home and your car, and then you have to go to work, right? When someone has financial freedom and working is now optional, you are a threat to the order. Because there was this power dynamic shift that happened where when there was, we'll just call it crap rolling downhill, magically it didn't roll on my head. They started pushing it to somebody else's because they knew I didn't have to be there. I probably said more than I should have to my coworkers, and the company was accommodating me more. And then it kind of became a problem because everyone else, and I'll also say this: you are way richer than you think you are when you don't have cost of living and housing. And so I learned that the system is designed not to pay you what you're worth. The system is designed to pay you the cost of a housing, car, food, medicine, vacation. That's what your salary is set for. When you don't have housing costs, you are way richer than you think you are. My boss and the guy above him was making $250,000 a year, and he told me he couldn't put 5 grand a year into his IRA because of lifestyle creep, because he was over leveraged, and because he was doing the American dream, right? He didn't start at $250,000 a year right out of college. He worked his way up to that, and he was stuck there. He was balding and in his late 50s at that time, and he never missed a day of work. Okay. I was not making six figures even at this job, but I had more freedom and more disposable income because I didn't have to pay for my cost of housing. That created me being a threat to the system and the order, even though I loved my job. We also had this issue coming up that we want to have kids eventually. And my wife said, when I'm in school, you can do whatever you want. But whenever I'm out of school and it's time for us to start a family, you need to find another job or go pursue real estate or go do something else or whatever you want to do. You just can't travel every week. And so we were coming to this impasse. So, no matter how hard you work for a company, those promises were left unfulfilled. And 3 days before your vacation, they'll terminate you and have a tow truck waiting in your neighborhood to take your company car and barely give you time to get your personal items out of that thing. And they'll overnight you a box to send your laptop and phone back into, just like that. After you've given nights, weekends, holidays, after you've missed family events, after you've missed weddings and funerals, after even if you were sick or tired or injured, you were on a plane going out to another city every single week for work. After 8.5 years, they didn't care. So I'm glad I woke up to it early, being that I started to see this kind of in my late 20s and in my early 30s. And then by 35, I'm real estate retired at 35. And looking back, I could have got there a lot sooner. I was just fearful. And, somebody told me what gets in the way of a great life is a good life. And I had a good life. I had a nice job. I had a, company car. I had house hacking going on. So I had no cost of living. I was putting away thousands of dollars a month. And so I had a good life that got in the way of a great life. But there's nothing holding me back now, John.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you say that because we get caught up in high paying jobs that pay all the bills and then some. And so yeah, I get this a lot, and it was a lot mostly from my parents saying like, you get paid so well, like why do you want to go out and pursue this? There's so much stability in what it is that you're doing, but you want to go out and you want to build your own business where it's hard, it's stressful. But it comes back to, well, if you die tomorrow, your company's going to replace you.
That's right.
Yeah,
Or if you
just go
even
out and do
need to
your own
go on
thing.
vacation, if you need to go
Yeah,
on vacation to handle family affairs overseas, well, they're just happy to replace you after almost a decade.
yeah.
And I felt like a rock star, John. I was flying, I was staying in nice hotels everywhere I went. I was eating at very nice restaurants on a company credit card. I had a company vehicle for years. It was great. I felt like a rock star. Oh, and so it was very comfortable, and people in my family were saying the same thing. "Why are you messing around with houses?" Is not, you could do so much better than this. But I understood that wealth was created by owning assets, right? And so if you look back at people's income, it's not their W-2 didn't make them rich. It's that they bought and hold things. It doesn't matter if it was gold, silver, real estate, equities, index funds, doesn't matter what it is. Holding equity in assets is what made people rich. Everyone I know who was wealthy, they didn't make it from earning a W-2 job. They made it from holding assets. And so I'm just glad I realized that in my mid to late 20s instead of being 40, 50, 60 years old, riding a desk realizing that my salary is not going to get me where I wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, great that you learned that at an early age. So now you are no longer employed. You have to go out and you have to earn your own paycheck. What was the toughest part mindset wise?
It's a little bit of a transition when you don't have anybody to tell you what to do anymore. You're telling yourself what to do. But I joke with my personal assistant. I tell her, "You're the boss. You got to tell me what to." I give her tasks, and we structure my calendar, and I go out and do that. But all joking aside, it's different when you have the freedom to work 18 hours a day or take a day off. So it was a period of adjustment, but I'm 2 years into it now and I have a schedule, and you got to live or die by your calendar. So you have to put workout in there. You have to put family time in there. You have to put time to meal prep in there because me and my wife, we love meal prepping. And I love being able to send my wife off to work every day now that my wife is still working. And now that she's out of school, she is working. I love sending her off to work every day. I love making her breakfast every day. And I love being able to just have the freedom to drive an elderly family member around if they need to, if they come to town, or being able to go. You know what real luxury is, John? Real luxury is going to shop at Costco at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. That is luxury. Okay. I don't know how I could handle it when I had a W 2 life that we work all week and then we come home on the weekend. We got to go fight the crowds and everybody else just to get a parking spot or to get food and gas. And then here's what I learned. And I'm going off in the deep end here in theory or like philosophy, the better words, philosophy is like it's almost like society is a scam is how I felt because everyone's working Monday through Friday, and then the only time they can go on vacation is when, like holidays, like Labor Day and 4th of July and everything. Guess what the prices of plane tickets do on those times? They
They'll
like
jump.
double. Guess what the prices of hotels do? They double. And
Yeah.
Disneyland and rental cars and everything else. Me and my wife have the freedom to travel when we want. We can go in the off seasons. We go in the middle of the week. Things are incredibly cheap. And so not only do you owning real assets and controlling your time bring you additional wealth, but then you are like not fighting crowds. You're not what you realize is a bidding system. When you go get a rental car for a vacation, you're bidding. You're bidding against everybody else who's trying to get out of the house for their 3-day weekend. So we don't really travel or celebrate the holidays too much anymore. We might like grill in the backyard or something. But anytime we want to do something, I don't need to buy her flowers on Valentine's Day when Costco cranks it up from $11 a bundle to $25 a bundle for flowers. I can buy her flowers at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. So any other challenges I face in owning my own business are nowhere near as bad as like how rewarding it is just having time control and time freedom. So yeah, I had to learn my own schedule. I had to learn how to be responsible for myself. I had to have better budgeting skills. I had to network more and be involved. I started a podcast, the Be Someone podcast, with Michael Hoang. You were a guest on it, but none of that is like it is a privilege to do that because then you get to see how you live beyond that. When you can travel wherever you want, go shopping whenever you want. It's almost like the suburbs become a ghost town, right? Because everybody goes to school and work in the morning, and I go into my backyard and grill at like 10 a.m. on a weekday, and my neighborhood is silent because everybody's at work. And then I get on the roads that are empty and I go to Costco that is empty. And then I look at like what it costs to go to Mexico or what it costs to go to Asia or what it costs to go to the Bahamas. And I'm just for fun, I'm just looking at trips and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, because I'm not being forced to bid against the entire middle class workforce. And I didn't realize that my whole life when I had a job, everything you're doing is like you're like bidding against other people to see who's willing to pay the most to have a good family vacation. You do in the middle of the month or the middle of the week or the middle of the year, you're paying like what it truly costs for that business to run their business. There are some challenges when you're transitioning, but the rewards are far greater than any challenge I've faced so far. Going to bed on time in the evening, maintaining a routine of sleeping properly, not becoming gluttonous with food. There was a food challenge there for a short while I had to overcome. And then you know what else is messy? Again, I don't. It's like when you have all the time in the world and you call your friends and they're all working. That was tough. And then so they're like, okay, I'll see you this weekend. Weekend comes. Do you really want to get out and fight traffic and pay more to do everything to go hang out with your friends? And so the messiness was learning I had to go find different friends, people who are like entrepreneurs and real estate retired, and I had to go join clubs and join the Chamber of Commerce and things to find people that are at my level or doing the things that I'm doing. But really, I also thought I wanted to do nothing. And I learned after 2 years, you do not want to do nothing. In fact, it's probably really bad for your health. So there was a few month period there where I didn't do a whole lot. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. So we don't want to lose our usefulness to other people. And so when we make money in our small business, what we are doing is we're solving problems. And the bigger the problem we solve, the bigger the reward. Same thing with your job. If everybody's unhappy with your job now, look at the problems you're solving and the size and value of those problems. Go find bigger problems to solve, and you'll notice your salary goes up. Same thing in the W-2 world. And so what quickly happened is I quit my W-2 job because I wanted to be healthy, stay at home, be with my wife more. What it quickly turned into is I just need to find bigger problems to solve. So you don't I thought the goal was to sit at home and do nothing. I quickly learned that that is not healthy. So that was a bit of an adjustment as well.
Yeah, we talk about different types of messiness, but from what it sounds like, and this is something that I had trouble with when I wanted to get out and I wanted to make that I wanted to leave the workforce and do my own thing. It was how do I get there, and then how do I get there the fastest? So you're just rushing through everything. But for you, it just seemed like you were able to take your time, and a lot of the chaos that most people have to go through or do go through, you were able to avoid that, but you still had other things that kind of didn't go as planned, or maybe not as smoothly as you thought it would go.
Yeah, I probably took too long to transition, and that was a fear factor that I had to get over. I know I felt like I was rushing, but I look back at that timeline, I was like, "What was I doing? What was I thinking?" You know? But knowing what I know now, I could have achieved the same goals that I got going further and faster. And then, I also did something that most people wouldn't recommend. I broke open my 401k because I learned very quickly. But I do have a self-directed IRA, which is very powerful when it comes to real estate investing. And I've talked about that on my podcast. I'm sure you've talked about that a lot because you taught me a couple of things you can do with your self-directed IRA too that are really fun. You can buy notes and you can hold land and you
Mhm.
can hold alternative assets. You can invest in real estate. So I do have a
Yep.
self-directed IRA. But when I looked at my returns on one single family property and I compared that to everything my 401k had done in that same amount of time, there is just no comparison. Like you are not going to triple your money in like a single deal. You're not going to, take I had a deal that out of my pocket came $17,000. And then when I sold the property a few years later, $115,000 went back into my pocket. And all along the way, I was taking tax write offs and I was also getting cash flow every month of about $400 or $500 a month. And there's no way my 401k could do that. So when I left my job, I also broke open my 401k, which is a controversial thing as well. But there's just no way that I could get the returns of my 401k. Now you can get some amazing returns in a self-directed IRA, which I still hold, but with your 401k, investing in index funds, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because been a big focus of mine because a lot of people don't really know about self-directed retirement accounts. And I mean, being able to invest in the things that you know that have a greater return and where you're able to actually play a part in it, I think is extremely powerful.
Yeah, call Charles Schwab. Here's my favorite one when you try to tell someone about self-directed uh, IRAs. You call Charles Schwab and say, "Yeah, I want to transfer my IRA to a self-directed IRA." They say, "It is self-directed. You're directing it. You pick the investments because they don't want you to know about these mom and pop companies out there, these custodians, because they can't afford to buy a Super Bowl commercial like Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade or whoever can, right? And
Yeah.
so I've even seen some brokerages calling it a self-directed IRA. No one's directing it for you. You're directing it yourself. You're picking the stocks in it. And I said, no, I want like to move it to a custodian. You have to say, I want to move it to a custodian where I can invest in hard assets or alternative assets or things I know best. And then they
And
know,
pay a
oh
lot less
man, the jig
fees.
is up. And pay yeah, and pay a lot less fees as well. Yeah, a lot less fees. Most people
Yeah.
don't realize this, but in your 401ks and even your IRAs, a lot of these target date funds and a lot of these index funds have fees or little kickbacks built into them for the custodian, the plan manager. So when they say, "Oh, we're just charging you, $90 a year to run your account or $90 a quarter," it's not. Their fees are baked in everywhere you go in those
Mhm.
accounts. When you move your money to a self-directed IRA, like truly a self-directed custodian, you can invest in what you know best. And for me and John, that's real estate. And so we can lend, you can buy land, you can even buy rentals, but I don't recommend doing that because there's so much
Yeah.
tax code involved with holding rentals in an IRA and you have to use third-party management and you can't take the depreciation, which is the whole point of owning real estate really is besides leverage is the depreciation. But what I know best is real estate. And so the type of returns that I can get from my self-directed IRA, Wall Street cannot provide me. So that was a big transition in my life was to break open my okay, and then also roll my IRA over to a self-directed IRA. That's been a big, 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 big impact for me. And then I tell my friends and family about it, and it's like they don't really get it. They don't really understand it. They can't imagine a world outside of their index funds or their bond funds or their target date funds.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the first thing I did was same thing. As soon as I left my job, moving that over to self-directed and just started building relationships, doing the things that I knew.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you know how to buy a rental property for yourself, you also know that you wanna lend on a rental property for other people, right? And so
Yeah.
people like you and me, we're using one skill to make money 2 different ways, and one of
Yeah.
them's tax deferred, the other one's tax free, right? And so
Yeah.
I can only do so many deals a year, but I can lend until I'm out of money. And
Right.
so I can do a few deals a year for myself, and then I can lend on several deals or dozens of deals for other people. It's lower effort, lower return on whatever. And so I know if a deal works for me, it also works for me to lend on it.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so now going back to or going to reflection time. Knowing what you know now, what's some advice that you would give to yourself when you made that decision that I no longer want to be a W-2 employee?
So, what would I advice I would give myself? I would only take advice from people who love me and truly love me, right? And one of my mentors told me this. Only take advice from people who truly love you, people who pay you, people who you pay, and people who regulate your industry. And here's the big one: people who are already where you want to be. And so my problem was I was taking advice from people who are not already where I want to be. And so everybody has an Uncle Bill that lost some money in real estate decades ago who had no idea what he was doing. He was just following the crowd. I did not let that guide me. And like the people who had the strongest voice against what I was doing are people that had no idea what it is that I do. They have no expertise in it. My father comes from a blue collar background with construction heavy equipment. I would never tell that man how to fix or operate or repair a piece of heavy machinery. He knows way better than me, but for some reason he thought it was a good idea to tell me that I shouldn't be doing real estate. So I feel like if I was not listening to the corporate culture in my W 2 or friends or family, I feel like I would have done more faster. And that 4.5 years that I was sitting on a house hack living for free, I would have been buying, 4 or 6 houses a year instead of sitting there just enjoying my job. Because once you get over the fear, I think they always say like the hardest deal is your first deal. And after that,
Mm.
you're like, "Oh, this is it?" Like that's all there was. All right, give me another one, give me another one, give me another one, to the point where it's almost like an addiction where I'm laying awake in bed at night while my wife is sleeping and I'm just listening to my heartbeat and I'm just like, "Man, I need another deal." Like I need the sun to come up so I can go make a phone call to somebody so I can send out direct mail so I can get on the phone with my VAs and we can find another deal. And I would just if I could tell my younger self that, I would have been able to get out of the rat race a lot faster.
What I really like about your story is that you could have gotten out faster, but again, with the way the pace that you did it, it just sounds like a lot less chaos. Cause I was in the spot where, yeah, I was laying awake at night, hunting for like thinking about my next deal. I was like strolling on through opportunities to see what I wanted to try to get into. But then at the same time, because of the pace at which I wanted to go, which was not safe at all, I ran into a lot of troubles in terms of just chaos and having to clean things up. I think had I some advice I would give myself is maybe go a little bit slower.
Grass is always greener, brother.
Yeah,
Grass is always greener on the other side. I wanted to go faster, you wanted to go slower.
yeah, somewhere in the middle is the best, right? The best route.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed hearing your story. It's a little bit different than what I thought was out there because most people, especially in our world, like to try to move quickly and shine very brightly as fast as they can. But I just love the stability that you had and just the thoughtfulness in the way that you approached it. I think it was what a lot of people should be doing, myself included. But yeah, how can people reach out to you and work with you?
Yeah, follow my Instagram at Michael B Someone on Instagram. And I also have a podcast, which you were a guest on. Wherever you get your podcasts, it's the Be Someone podcast with Michael Hoang. But if anybody has any questions, shoot me a DM. And I'm based in Houston, Texas, and I love helping out newbies and people getting started.
Very cool. Yeah, we will have those links in the description just to make life easier for everyone. And again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, John. Good seeing you again, man.
That's it for today's episode of Life After W2. I'm John Chan, and I appreciate you tuning in. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend who's ready to take control of their financial future. And if you're curious about how self-directed retirement accounts can unlock opportunities in alternative investing, grab our free guide. It's packed with insights to help you get started. The link's in the description. See you next time.